Let's talk about The Comedian, okay? So, look, a lot of people telling me that this looks like it's going to be the spiritual successor of The King of Comedy. De Niro's coming back doing stand-up comedy and a little bit of a different twist to it. And that's great. Look, The King of Comedy is a great movie, and I really request you probably watch that film just to begin with. But if you're expecting a spiritual successor to The King of Comedy, I suggest that you don't fucking buy a ticket to this. That's just a simple truth. Here's the thing about this movie, right? Here's kind of the interesting thing about the film. This movie is a comedy about comedy, and it doesn't really manage to really be funny. I think the problem with this movie is just that it's kind of a missed opportunity. I think you have a lot of key players here, both on and off camera, and I feel like this movie still doesn't really come across as a really good film just to begin with. And I feel like that's the unfortunate thing. Now, from behind the camera, you have a great director like Taylor Hafford. He pretty much directed Officer and a Gentleman. He directed also a great film, Ray. I really enjoyed that one. But then you also have on camera, which is pretty much De Niro, Leslie Mann, Danny DeVito, Billy Crystal, a whole bunch of, Harvey Keitel. The list can go on and on and on. Edie Falco, like I said, the list can go on and on and on. You have a great cast, right? That's great. The biggest problem, I feel like, with The Comedian is just that it's not overly funny, as I said. I feel like the biggest thing is that the jokes just kind of feel a little bit unnatural and tries to be a little bit too edgy and cool. And therefore, it doesn't really feel like anything adds any weight to it. Look, you can be homophobic in your jokes. You can be racist. You can take jabs at people. That's great. And that's fun to see, I guess, in some way. But if you don't have any sort of like push or effort into your jokes, your shit just kind of falls a little bit flat. And I feel like that's kind of what this movie is. It's a punchline that just kind of fails miserably, just to begin with. I did like the supporting cast in this movie, and I think it does really do a good enough job. I like Danny DeVito. I like Leslie Mann. And it's fun to see these people kind of play around in this world, so to speak, and they all do a fun enough performance. The problem is they're in the movie. They just don't do really anything here. Just to begin with, right? I feel like everybody just kind of pops in and out and whatever it may be, and I feel like that's really a big problem. Also, on top of that, you have a lot of cameos, and cameos are kind of fun to see, especially if you can spot what De Niro movie they were pretty much with him with. Like Billy Crystal and Charles Grodin, which is pretty fun, as Cloris Leachman. They're all great. But if anything, they just make the movie seem like it really is a missed opportunity because they're funny, but the movie itself, outside of their like few second cameos, is not, just to begin with. And I feel like that's the unfortunate thing. But the biggest problem, I feel like, is unfortunately De Niro himself. Not necessarily his acting. I think the acting in the movie is quite good. But I feel like the problem is that De Niro, even though I can buy De Niro as a boxer, I can buy him as a gangster, I can buy him, as a priest, I can buy him as almost anything. And I even bought him as a comedian back then. But in this movie, I can't buy him at all. Why? Because when you have stand-up comedians making cameos, it really makes De Niro's work look even more kind of shitty. Just to begin with, because I feel like De Niro's stand-up routines in this movie feel very unnatural, and it feels like he's reading off of a prompter, and they don't feel like there's really any edge to his jokes at all. They just kind of feel like he's reading off of a line. De Niro doesn't really come across as funny in any of his things, and I hate getting this in a comedy, and you may actually know what I'm saying, but when a joke is kind of happening, I get a chuckle here or there, but I mainly get kind of this. It's kind of funny. That's pretty much it. When you get that in a comedy, that's a pretty good sign that this movie's a little bit mediocre to begin with. Overall, I did like Leslie Mann, and I feel Leslie Mann's the only real character in this thing because I feel like she's the only one that actually has some sort of effort put into this thing. De Niro, like I said, it's funny, he's loose or whatever it may be, but he doesn't add anything to feel like he's a legit comedian. The movie wants to be a bit of a character study on this comedian and tries to explore what is comedy to this person. What is funny, but it doesn't do the script is not solid enough to actually explore those themes. It wants to, and believe me, there's some of the drama moments that kind of really fall flat just to begin with, but unfortunately, I feel like even on the comedy side of things, it's not funny, but even on the drama, it seems like it's just overly not really, well-deserved, so therefore, there's really nothing there. Leslie Mann and Robert De Niro's relationship is actually kind of interesting a little bit, but that's the problem. The movie wants to be a character study of a character that's not overly interesting to study. And I feel like that's the kind of like the fucked up thing about it. But like I said, you have fun performances from the cameos that kind of pop in, but that's pretty much the highlights of this movie. Unfortunately, from that, you don't really get a character that's really likable. He's kind of a dickhead, and that's pretty much it. It's fun to see De Niro be a dick, but then again, look, would you rather see De Niro be an embarrassing dick in this movie or an embarrassing dick in Dirty Grandpa? You can take a pick. This is not necessarily a great movie to really watch per se, but it's kind of fun to see De Niro kind of attempt to be a stand-up comedian because, boy, does it not really feel like it's, funny. Overall, it does kind of come across as sometimes a little bit awkward and just kind of just like you probably going to be left with a blank look in your face. But overall, like I said, this is pretty much not a fantastic film, but it's a decent enough one. It's not necessarily the direction, but more of the script. And overall, the movie just doesn't be that funny. The movie does feel like it could be a little bit outdated since this is 8 years in the making passion project for De Niro. And maybe that kind of seems the way. Comedy changes from, especially for a 10-year gap. But that's just my thoughts. I think the Comedian is a little bit of a funny movie. You can get a chuckle here and there. And it's nice to see some of these interesting, fun cameos. But that's pretty much about it. Overall, you could pretty much throw this right into the pile of pretty much embarrassing De Niro films in a way. With like Little Fockers or even Dirty Grandpa. Maybe not as bad, but then again, those do need to be burnt and probably a Chilean mine somewhere. But then again, that's just my thought. Comment, subscribe, and like. Share this video if you can. I'm Chris Smith, and I'm signing out.